Good morning, viewers. It's, what is it, 8:15 on the 19th of May, 2025. And, well, get into some news here. Some of the, I guess you'd call it big news, is that what is it called? I guess the Hate Russia Club guy won in Romania. And apparently the neutral guy, the guy that's neutral against Russia or on Russia. Of course, you're not allowed to be neutral. You have to hate Russia. You're not going to be able to be allowed to hold a political office in the EU or a lot of other places unless you hate Russia, of course, because then you get the support and all that sort of thing. But in spite of the fact, I guess they were having dead people vote, just like in the United States. So the Democrats were really big onto that, having people that died maybe 50, 100 years ago are still voting for Democrats, but it was the same, I guess, in Moldova. But anyway, there was some cheating, but it might not have been enough to actually win, because the neutral guy, whatever his name was, Simeon, he conceded defeat. And yeah, so I guess that's the good way to go. And apparently, if you sit around and fight all the time and say there was cheating too long, I guess it harms the progress of the nation anyway. Who knows? Maybe this guy will not be too radical hatred, full of hatred. You know, like if you look at Maya Sandow, and of course, as everybody knows, they're rewriting the history books and changing a lot of things, saying that the German Nazis were the liberators, and I don't know. You guys already know about all this stuff. Like in Ukraine, they've rewritten the history completely, you know. And of course, their hero is the guy that massacred lots of innocent people, Bandera. And I guess that's a very well-known fact. And he was a Uber-Nazi, I guess you would call him. He's a bigger Nazi than Adolf Hitler was. So, but anyway, that's their hero, and who knows what. They've pretty much ingrained it into the people there that virtually everything that's bad that happened in the world is because of Russia, Russia, Russia. It's just a lot like in the United States. You remember growing up in the Cold War that, you know, Russia this, Russia, Russia. Of course, it's probably worse now. Very strange. In those days, we were using the culprit was communism, you know, but I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that theme. I've talked about that in a lot of the videos. And, you know, studying history, being an honor graduate, and professors being astounded. I was pretty good in certain things. I was pretty good in writing in my English classes, whether it be analysis of a Shakespeare play or anything like that. Professors were really, you know, in shock and things. So I could do pretty good in writing, and I did really well in history. I suck in chemistry. I suck terribly in chemistry. I'm not even good in electronics, even though I was doing that in the Army, all kinds of things. But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm just trying to emphasize the fact that maybe some of the things I put out as far as politics and history and all that are something to be listened to. And then you got, I don't know, maybe I'm just mostly getting pissed off about so much thorough brainwashing. So many people are so thoroughly brainwashing, you know, that the Nazis are good, and those that don't like Nazism and try to fight against Nazism are all the bad guys. So the whole world is changing that way. As you all notice, also some of these things, you know, supported by the Democrats, that pedophiles are very good people. And how dare they try to put them in prison? Because they have to spread the love amongst our children and things like that. I don't really know. And then, of course, they even changed the name. They call them MAPS, minor attracted persons, and oh gosh, the whole world is screwed up. But like I said, let's just let's get into some of the other topics. Putin put out a few days ago that for Ukraine to continue this war, they have to prowl the streets, of course, and start snapping up people. There are some terrible videos. There was one I saw. Oh man, that was the most terrible thing. I'll tell you about that in a bit here. But anyway, apparently a lot of people in Russia are volunteering. And the thing is that I started thinking, well, if like Putin says, they get 50 to 60,000 people volunteering. They say, I actually see, I was wondering, well, what is, it doesn't mean that they're putting 50 to 60,000 new soldiers in the military every month, and Ukraine has to prowl the streets to try to get 30,000 to join, to go, get massacred in the meat grinder. But I guess what happens is there's 50 to 60,000 people trying to volunteer. I don't know how many they take, but obviously they're not going to be shoveling that many people. That would mean that there's more Russians dying than there are Ukrainians, which has been proven not to be true. And the Ukrainians even admit that. So I think they're probably maybe they're selecting 10, 20,000 out of these 50,000 that show up and want to volunteer. I have no idea. Like I said, all this information is always suspect anyway, but it's been put out. It's a well-known fact that they're really pushing to try to get 30,000 every month in Ukraine to deplete all those that get killed, and they're losing about 30,000 every month that are dying in the meat grinder. So that's really terrible. A lot of people, just cannon fodder. So, and these people, they don't want to go and fight. And anyway, a lot of time it's women on the streets trying to save these men from getting thrown into a van. It's normally they go with 5 recruiters, and there's some circling around, and there's 1 or 2, and they're punching the guys in the guts, punching them and beating them and everything, trying to throw them into the vans to go die for Nazism. They're not dying for Ukraine. That's not for the sovereignty of Ukraine. It's a very well-known fact. It's very easy to prove. These people, they're making them die for Nazism. They don't want to go. They want to kill Russians. That's what the whole thing. And as I said, even back in the 1950s, all this stuff was an indoctrination program, very, very well known, is to get them to hate Russia. They're trying to create an anti-Russia. So Ukraine, I guess the real name is anti-Russia. It's not Ukraine. And as everybody says, Ukraine means on the edge of Russia. Russian history started in Ukraine. The first time they called people Russians were those that were in Kiev. That's where the name comes from, back in around the, I think maybe that was, what's his name, Igor the Wise, or, anyway, doesn't matter, I forgot these things. I'm just learning this stuff anyway. So, matter of fact, I'm learning from somebody who is not pro-Russian. I mean, from this book that was written. Luckily, it was written before this conflict, because as things are changing, and of course now the new editions of that book are putting wokeism somehow in this thing. I don't understand how that's supposed to work out. Gosh, looks nice, beautiful light here, huh? But let's keep going. Anyway, Putin, I guess he was saying that they catch people like dogs to meet their quota of 30,000 per month. And yes, okay. I'm going to switch around a little bit. I'll get back to Ukraine too, as I always do. I just go with these things chronologically as the messages come about, on the Telegram and other channels. So Israel officially launched, I think it's called Gideon's Chariot or Gideon's Chariots, I don't know, to again pound these poor people in Gaza, trying to exterminate them, either making them leave or to slaughter them in order for ethnic cleansing. And of course, Donald Trump is very much in favor of this, because maybe he doesn't really like the killing as much, but he wants them out of there because he wants to create a big real estate project, the Riviera of the Middle East, for all the rich people to go and vacation. And those people that have lived there maybe for hundreds of years, get out of here. God gave that land to Israel. Didn't you read it in the real estate contract? God is a real estate agent. So, yeah. Satanyahu said there is no scenario which will stop them from ethnically cleansing Gaza. Obviously, that is his. I don't think he said that, but that is definitely and undeniably the fact. They've already been talking about that. And now they're also, I told you a day or two ago that They're trying to herd them into South Gaza. Well, they're bombing South Gaza again, too. It's just the same thing. They've been doing this for decades. They herd them somewhere, say it's a safe zone, and then they bomb the safe zones, bomb the hospitals. There's even some surgeon, I guess he's a surgeon, and they bomb the hospitals so badly that none of the equipment works, and there's nothing that he could do. So I guess they were trying to kill him like they killed so many. There's hundreds and hundreds of doctors and surgeons they've killed. And they were trying to get him, I guess, so he was really running. He ran, I don't know. They had some video of him, and unfortunately he had to leave the patients and everything. Ah, man alive. And they're showing patients unattended in hospitals. They're just sitting there. They might have some tubes hooked up to them. Machines aren't working, nothing like that. Yeah, and Donald Trump says people are starving there. We have to increase the food or something, humanitarian aid. Yeah, right. I believe that. And of course, maybe to keep them alive long enough to ship them. I think like I said, his goal is to ship them to Libya now. That is the big target. Somalia, Libya, other places where there's a lot of turmoil. Make them go there. So, how nice, huh? Okay. I started too late. It's like I said, I started this video at 8:15. Too many people running around here. Okay. Meanwhile, Donald Trump keeps these big, huge bombs flowing to Israel. More any bombs they want. Bombs, bombs, bombs. Israel never pays 1 penny for any of those. Compliments mostly of the United States taxpayer, but all taxpayers of the world, as the United States dollar is the world's reserve currency. You are paying for that too. We're all paying for that. How nice of you. How nice of you. I'm sure the people in Gaza really appreciate that of us. What are we going to do? And then, of course, if you go and you protest against Palestine, you're in deep crap, just like this guy, the honor graduate from New York University. He gave his speech and said, that they should be helping the Palestinians. It's terrible what's going on there. So in other words, they took his diploma away from him. So in other words, all those years of his schooling, get lost. You don't get it, You're for Palestine. That means you're against Israel, so that means you don't get a diploma. Israel are our masters. They're the masters of America. They run America. Of course, Israel admits that, as I say. They say they own more politicians. Like I said, there was that, I don't think it wasn't even a joke. It was really a true thing. Somebody asked some politician in Israel, why don't you just become the 51st state of the United States? And the politician says, no, that would be really stupid. Each state in America gets 2 senators, and right now Israel has 30 senators, U.S. senators, so why would we want to become a state? In other words, they have far more control over the United States government than any entity on the planet. In other words, Israel owns the U.S. government. There's no doubt about that. Donald Trump will do anything for Israel, except maybe attack Iran, because I don't know, that would be, and look he thought he could conquer Yemen, and that's a big story there too. I'll have more about that in a little bit here. Everybody, Yemen, it's like nobody can beat Yemen. Yemen is used to war. They got most everything is underground. They don't give up. They will not give up. And, that's of course a war for Israel. And now they're even questioning in Israel, Netanyahu, they're saying it's not, the military experts are saying it is not possible. It is not possible to defeat the Houthi. And so they're trying to figure out some sort of a scenario to somehow defeat the Houthi. It's not like it will work so much as Donald Trump did. He just, because the Houthi have nothing against the United States, so he just declared victory and walked away. They were begging us to stop, which of course they weren't. Donald Trump, he's coming up with misinformation. It's not any better than the Democrats for the most part. More lies and disinformation over and over again to make himself look like he's the greatest president. Well, he says that, the greatest economy that ever existed in the world. I kicked the crap out of ISIS while we were giving them weapons and giving them aid and bombing the Syrian army for them. We defeated them. Well, you guys all know the real truth. It was Russia and the Syrian army that defeated the so-called ISIS. And I guess you probably asked them, they probably have never heard the word ISIS. I don't really know. But these were all people paid by the United States and their allies to try to overthrow Assad and it didn't quite work. And of course, lots and lots of multi-billionaires and things are involved in paying for all of that stuff too. And a lot of it is for Genie Petroleum to get that pipeline, to get the pipeline going from the Golan Heights. Well, now they're going to have it. They're going to realize that they finally did win. Get the pipeline for Genie Petroleum to go from the Golan Heights and probably to Turkey. And Assad would not allow them first to go and steal the territory, the Golan Heights, from Syria, and then pipe the oil that belongs to Syria through Syria for their own profit and for the detriment of Syria. It's like, what do you think, I'm crazy? Yeah, so that was the main reason for the war. But let's keep going. I already talked about that stuff. Very well-known military analyst former military analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski, who used to work in the Pentagon. Very, very well-known analyst. Very, very good. She says that the Houthi-U.S. conflict revealed the decline of the United States military. But of course, it really makes me wonder if the U.S. military was ever so powerful anyway. I mean, huge amounts of bombs, massive bombs, devastating weapons. But in general, has the United States military ever really proven how powerful they are? Because, as a lot of us now know, it was the Soviet Union that defeated the Nazis. It was not the United States. And of course, the United States had their ass handed to them in Vietnam. They've had their ass, what she said, they've never gone up against any serious enemy. They only go after practically defenseless little countries that don't have much of a military, and, showing how great they are. It's not like Russia that really defeated the Nazis. And Russia is now, of course, still in war against the entire West, just using the West is just using Ukrainian bodies and blood as their proxies. And of course there are U.S. military, and it's been admitted by many, many people, U.S. military probably even still in Ukraine. And of course the British are heavily, heavily involved. That's very well known. French are involved. I don't know, the films of American soldiers in I don't know about lately. That's what I said. I have to qualify that. I don't know about lately, but there have been past films of American soldiers after, like Russia bombed someplace. They had their cameras rolling, and of course with their tattoos for 101st Airborne, their haircuts, talking American English, and being in turmoil, and British soldiers. British were heavily, heavily involved in Syria as well, raping and pillaging. And now that it was come out, even the BBC just recently reported of all of the huge, huge atrocities in Syria and Afghanistan of British soldiers. The BBC even admitted that. That's incredible. Yeah. And there's even lots of British soldiers admitting to these rapes and these murders of killing children and all that sort of thing. But anyway, like I said, it sounds too incredible to believe. And my channel is obviously suppressed, but I'm even telling you that the BBC even reported this stuff. Americans report this stuff, that they were involved in these sort of things. Anyway. I would have to have more money to be showing you film footage and stuff, and then of course I probably would be kicked off of YouTube right away. Probably a lot of that stuff is not allowed, as you guys know. Okay. But anyway, Karen Kwiatkowski said that the military decline has been going on for decades, and I'm making me wonder, maybe even World War II. That's decades ago too. Yeah. And she said it was very much like the American Revolution, where you had the arrogant British. In the thing it said overestimating, but it was but I would think that maybe it was a mistake. It should have said underestimating, the resolve and the resourcefulness of those people in the colonies in the United States. When she said, I believe when you're fighting for your own land and your own country, of course, you fight a lot harder than if you're a proxy military and such. And of course, that's why it's always important for governments to tell their people that they have the moral high ground and all that sort of thing. And I think even a lot of these people in Ukraine, I think a lot of them have come to realize that the Western Ukraine, I mean, they've admitted it, the Western Ukrainian government, that they were bombing and killing all these people in East Ukraine, which is supposed to be their people, bombing and killing them, you know, in large part because of the terrible crime that they spoke Russian, and you know, and they didn't really want to be underneath Nazi rulers. So anyway, a lot of these people in Ukraine, they realize that. A lot of them are starting to maybe even realize how bad the regime is in Kiev, and how they don't really give a crap about them. They care about their ideology of Nazism, and that's the whole idea of it all. The ideology must survive, you know, the masters of the universe. Anyway, this is kind of a rant, I guess. So what else? But she's saying like that the you know, because the United States only attacks really weak militaries and weak countries, she said that the decline has been hidden for quite some time. I don't know. She didn't say when, obviously, and I don't know. U.S. normally always declares to be themselves to be the winners of every war anyway, you know. I don't know. Okay, and Donald Trump, when he was in the Middle East, and I kind of missed this, but I guess he was going around in his Middle East trip, and he was trying, you know, and he was actually announcing to the entire world that all nations, he didn't say the Arab nations, all nations should support his sanctions against Iran. Of course, they all say, sounds just like it comes from Netanyahu, that Iran is a regional threat. I don't think so. I don't live there. I don't really know, but I don't know that there is some kind of a regional threat or anything like that. And so many lies coming all around it to try to get after Iran, but I don't think any kind of sanctions would work, because Iran is now very, very closely linked to Russia, and I think maybe that includes China. And I don't think Turkey wants to be big enemies with Iran. Turkey, nobody knows where they stand anyway. So, like I said, I'm not going to get into Turkey because I don't understand. I don't think the Turkish people even understand what the heck goes on. What Erdogan, like they say, he's a loose cannon. You never know which direction. You know, it's like a loose cannon rolling around on deck when the ship is going, and it's which way he's going to be pointing and firing cannonballs. So, okay. Oh, that one guy that won the ultra marathon, who happens to be Russian. Poor guy. Anyway, he won this ultra marathon in France, and just like always, Russian athletes are not allowed to compete. But wait a minute, is that politicizing sports? And the whole, even like the Olympics, the whole thing was not to politicize sports. That was the whole thing about the Olympics, was to say that sports should never be politicized. That was the message back in these old days, but now it's all politicized. So if you happen to be Russian, and if you go under the Russian flag, you know, you're not going to be able to enter. And if you do enter, your victory, if you do have a victory, is going to be taken away from you. So that's how it always works. It's been working for a long time. And you remember, even when that did not exist, it just so happened to be just coincidentally, anytime, like say the Olympics were somewhere in Russia, just coincidentally there was some event to make sure that everybody hates Russia and tries to boycott from going there. Just like the FIFA or anything. And it's going to come down at some point in time where the leaders, like it was nearly that way. I guess it was Theresa May. She was the leader of Great Britain at the time when they had the big, you know, football FIFA thing in Russia, and she's telling everybody not to go, and you know, some threats. And people that did go, they said they were really shocked that it was so much different than what we're told Russia is like. Yeah, but I don't know. I could keep on talking about this stuff all day long, but anyway, without any information, of course. But anyway, this guy, he had a Russian flag around his shoulder tied. I think it was maybe raining a little bit. And of course, that was also his major crime. So you could run in that marathon, but you cannot declare. If you declare you're Russian, then you don't get the win and stuff like that. Because you're damn Russian. Yeah. Oh. Because we over here, you are the inferior beings, and we are the master races. We're from the West. Okay. Anyway, what else is going on here? Oh, this guy, Pavel Durov. You know, he's got dual citizenship. He's Russian, born in Russia, and he's got French citizenship. And this is kind of a strange story. But the French were telling him that he is supposed to censor conservatives in Romania, and anybody that supports this other party that is not anti-Russia, that he's supposed to be taking them off, censoring him off of Telegram, and I don't know, silence them, censor them, you know, ahead of this election. And he said he refused to do that. He said their channels were supposed to be blocked. Anybody that is in favor of that candidate that is not anti-Russian, their channels were supposed to be blocked. French did that. It just sounds like YouTube, but YouTube actually doesn't. They try not to make it look like they're blocking or doing anything, but it seems to me they censor some channels that are not going around and saying how bad Russia is. Maybe it's my imagination. Okay. And Pavel said, I guess when they told him to censor these channels, he said, you can't defend democracy by destroying democracy, and you can't fight election interference by interfering in elections. You know, but of course in the West, you know, don't see that, don't notice that, don't notice what we're doing. It's your imagination. That's Russian disinformation. That's Russian disinformation that we hate Russia. Anyway, and that we are doing all these bad things. That's Russian disinformation. So, okay. There is now serious talk, it looks like, of Germany. You know, Germany already has now, I think it's against their, I don't know if it's in the Grundgesetz, but they're not supposed to be stationing troops in other foreign countries. And, you know, now they have them in the Baltics. They have tanks and everything, you know, all ready and willing to roll into Belarus. And, of course, as you know, they have a war. They're scheduling the war to start right around 2029 or 2030 against Russia. But, of course, Russia's going to cause it. Weird that they must have gone into the future and they see that Russia is going to attack them, and they have to, you know, get ready for this war in 2029 and 2030. Gosh, it's just unbelievable. But yet they're the good guys. You know, they're the good guys. You know, Russia's going to do it. Russia's going to attack us. After Ukraine, they're going to keep on rolling over. You know, oh, don't notice that fact that we, the West, were involved in bombing and killing 14,000 ethnic Russian people in eastern Ukraine. That didn't exist. You know, we, backing West Ukraine, were killing the East Ukraine people because we love our people. So, and they even admitted it, even on radio, and they were laughing about it. Anyway, well, I've mentioned that many times on this channel. Other people do too. I should keep mentioning it. So, anyway, Germany now stationing troops in Moldova. Apparently, this is going to go through, and yeah. But there's permanent bases with lots of tanks and things like that, like I said, in the Baltic. And of course the US actually has some permanent bases in some of those places as well. And a lot of time they're not really permanent, they just keep you know, in and out and all this sort of thing. But I don't know, what do they call that? They're not going to be, they're not going to be stationed. They are military advisory group. It's not going to be troops. It's, you know, the United States used to call them observers, or what are they, like trainers or something to do with training. And this is actually what the Germans are now. We're not stationing troops. They're a military advisory group, you know. And I guess this stuff is even written into the NATO policy, that they wanted to. They have to get Moldova, and of course I don't know if Romania is already there, but to have a NATO-style force. And I think they said their words are a NATO-style force has to be prepared in Moldova for the planned war against Russia. And there's somebody in Transnistria, I guess a political analyst there. Transnistria, it's one of these countries that Moldova, it's kind of like a what do you call that? Disputed territory, and everybody there is pro-Russian, but the problem is it's not linked to any part of Russia at all. One side is Ukraine, which is anti-Russia, and then on the other side is Moldova, where the government at least is very anti-Russia. So I don't know if there's any help for these people anyway. And like I put out before, they like cut off the gas lines to go to Transnistria, and Russia somehow swung some sort of a deal by paying Moldova huge amounts of money to keep the heat up, to keep the natural gas flowing to them, so these people would not die of cold in the wintertime. Anyway, the things that Russia has to do that you don't really ever hear about. Anyway, it's huge money for Moldova to be getting this gas, and Russia's doing this at a tremendous cost to themselves, but they're bad people. Anyway, okay. Anyway, they want a heavy military strategic interests. What is this? Oh, they're talking about this. They wanted these to gather these strategic interests in southern Ukraine, primarily in Odessa, and of course Transnistria. So the goal is, there's going to be some big fighting at some point in time there if this continues as it is continuing right now. It's going to be a lot of hostility. There might be a war that involves Transnistria and Moldova. And they're gearing towards it. Who knows? Maybe it will take until 2029. But they want this as some big strategic asset. And who knows what's going to happen with Odessa? It's a Russian city. Catherine the Great founded it and all. But of course, I don't know. Russia has not made any move towards that. Medvedev has said that it's a Russian city, and I don't know. Who knows? In other words, there's interest for Russia to keep this thing going too, to reclaim all of these former Russian areas, these people that are pro-Russia. And as you know, they had this this cultural center where they burned alive. I think 46 people were burned alive 2014 by the Nazis. They were Russian, and they were holed up in this one place, and they were attacked by the Nazis, and of course the EU loved that because they were Russians. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and I was going to talk about this was really, really horrible. I mean, you see a lot of these horrible things, and it doesn't even seem as horrible when you see that, like, these recruiters, these Ukrainian recruiters going around and trying to snap people up off the streets, like as Putin says, like dog catchers, and getting this people. But they had this one guy. I don't know how old this guy was, but apparently he looked like a guy they really wanted to go and send to the meat grinder. But it looks like they really beat him on the head. There was no recruiters there at that time, but there was ladies there and stuff, and it was apparently it was put out that this guy was beaten. He had blood coming out of his eye, one eye, and he was into convulsions, and his face was laying in a pool of blood. You have to look kind of close on the video. I'm not saying that you even want to see the video or whatever. And this guy was in convulsions, and it looked to me like he was dying. There was no report that this guy died, but they hit him so hard and beat him on the head and obviously gave him brain damage. So maybe then they walked away and said, well, we've pretty much, made this guy unuseful for anyone and anything. So let's just walk away and go find the next victim. So terrible. It was really terrible seeing this guy, and there's some lady there saying, call an ambulance or something. Somebody call an ambulance. And I don't know, maybe not enough people around, and people were in shock. Somebody was recording it. Everybody was in shock seeing this poor guy probably dying in pain on the streets. He might have even, I don't know, like I said, there was no report. He might have already been dead, and he was just twitching afterwards. Zelensky and his green shirts. It's I'd say that because in World War II, when Adolf Hitler seized power, they called his people that would go around and beat people, they called them the brown shirts. And it doesn't look any different than, except for the fact these people, a lot of them have green shirts, and that's the Zelenskys. I mean, it's a big Nazi thing anyway. So, no denying the fact that Zelensky is a Nazi. And a matter of fact, he even gave some gift to the Pope. And you know, he's nothing but everything he says, everything he does is nothing but propaganda for everybody to hate Russia. And he gave something, and it looked like it was on wood. Maybe it was crates that they had bombs in, apparently. And it was like an icon painting of looked like the Virgin Mary, apparently, with maybe Jesus or something. And it is something like about children, and he's of course trying to convince the Pope and all the Catholics and everybody that Russia is stealing children. And of course that is completely debunked. And the real truth is that Ukraine is unfortunately stealing children. There's way too much evidence about that. They're selling children. And there's way too many witnesses. But of course, you're not supposed to see that. Russian disinformation! You know, in all these Ukrainian women and all these people fleeing and telling these stories. All Russian disinformation. Oh, somebody taking their dog here to poop somewhere. Maybe I better watch out where I'm stepping here. Some lady, oh no. Uh-oh. Oh, I thought that was a pine cone. No. Estonia. As you know, I put out and other people have put out that they're trying to make the entire Baltic Sea. Oh, she decided not to. She's running. Make the entire Baltic Sea a NATO lake. And of course, there's these islands belonging to Sweden and many other places, and they're part of a treaty that says there will never be any military put on there. They will always be demilitarized, and of course now NATO has put military on there. They're putting missiles and things like that. They're doing it. I mean, the West does not obey any treaty. Whenever it serves their purpose, they just go ahead and do it anyway. Sometimes if it serves their purpose, if it's not that important, of course they'll obey the treaties. But if they get some big advantage, and of course the big thing is, as you all know, to do a strategic and a total defeat of Russia in any way they possibly can. Media, cultural, everything, military, economic, defeat and collapse, destroy Russia. That is the whole objective. I might add also it's pretty much the same thing with Trump, but Trump's just a little bit trickier in hiding it. You know, he's supplying weapons, as I always said, to Ukraine, and who's the one, you know, he's the first one to put the sanctions on the pipeline, and maybe at least Biden had the guts to blow it up and do everything possible to destroy Russia. But a lot of time they need Russia. The United States needs the uranium, and you know, all these countries are saying, oh, they stopped the flow of Russian oil, and now they come out and say, yeah, well, we still got it. We're trying to wean ourselves away from Russian oil, Russian gas, and all that sort of thing. Ukraine is helping them out by trying to blow up a lot of these transfer stations and all that. When they had the ceasefire, the truce, not to be blowing up anything for infrastructure and oil, that's when Ukraine actually was going hog wild. They were even bombing U.S.-owned transfer stations, taking Kazakhstani gas into Europe, and I don't know. Maybe the United States got them to stop doing it. I don't know. Okay, but Estonia, they're stopping and harassing, detaining ships in the Baltic that carry Russian oil. I don't know if I put it out, but a lot of people are putting out that they have, I think it was the last sanctions. Maybe it was the one that just came out. Maybe that's why they're doing this. Maybe that is, I think they are calling anybody that's, they call it the shadow fleet. You know, that because they're blocking a lot of selling of Russian oil and everything everywhere, but ships are coming. And I think this was from some African country, and they were coming, you know, for Russian oil. And Estonia, I guess, stopped it, detained it. I don't know if they seized the oil. You know, they're doing things like that as well, seizing things. I think one time they did seize the oil, or a few times. It's just like when they seized the grain. When Russia was sending grain to African countries, free of charge, by the way, Europe seized those ships and they stole the grain, and yeah. And then they want a resumption of the grain deal, things like that. It's a lot of this stuff going on that a lot of people never hear about. So along with this, now Russia has seized an Estonian ship. So it's, you know, since Estonia can do this, I guess Russia did this back to them. And of course, this is going to escalate. A lot of people are talking about this is the beginning of a big escalation. Who knows how it's going to escalate? Maybe the West will back down, say, well, this is a little bit too early. We don't want to start this yet because we have to militarize. We have to build up enough weapons until the official war will start in 2029 or 2030. So maybe that's what's going to happen. So maybe they'll cool it down. And like I said, they're still building their forces in those places. I don't know. They have a long way to go. Europe has a long way to go. They need a lot more weapons. And they can't assume that Russia is just sitting there doing nothing. And of course, they're already flooding Ukraine with drones. I guess the biggest drone country on earth is by far Ukraine. And Russia has more sophistication, I guess, in blocking drones. And maybe they have better drones. I don't know. But it's still going on. Ukraine is still losing. Maybe they need more drone operators in Ukraine. I don't really know. But that's the state of what is going on now. I don't know if maybe some things I didn't write down. Let me think. Israel, Gideon's chariot. I mentioned that one already. Yeah. I don't know. Donald Trump is saying, oh, it's not gonna. I don't know if he really even wants this war to end. Like I said, it's not like Donald Trump is the most honest man in the world either. He's more honest than a lot of these other people. But I don't know if he's that honest. I mean, if he were honest, if he really did want to stop this war, he would stop shoveling money and weapons to Ukraine. It's that simple. And he admits Russia's going to win this war. You're not going to beat Russia. And if you try to fight Russia, around Russia, anywhere around the borders of Russia, you're going to lose. And it's always been that way. And Russia knows this. The United States knows this. Donald Trump does anyway. So Zelensky he's in some kind of a fantasy world. And of course, he's working as hard as he possibly can to get the United States in the war. And if he is, unless he's really stupid, you know, even when the United States and all the military generals and all that, they all admit they can't beat Russia in a war, not even with all these countries combined. So why is Zelensky doing it? The only thing I can think of, he wants to keep the money flowing. And of course, as everybody knows, Ukraine, and even those that like Ukraine, they say it's the most corrupt country in Europe. And it is very corrupt, and it's really, really terrible. Like I said, they are the ones that are selling children. They sell children. And like the Nazis, what they were doing in World War II in Belarus, that's a known fact. They were killing children too, and they would drain their blood from them. And they would use them as blood donors for when they needed blood for German soldiers and maybe Ukrainian soldiers or whatever. Ukrainians were normally just the big murderers in Belarus, and the Germans, I guess, like that. They liked them from Lithuania and those countries because they were the most bloodthirsty and killing. You know, they would kill lots of children and innocent people, and I guess that was their value. And I think the Germans really didn't like that. I think maybe the Germans, they had most of them had higher morals. Can you believe that? And yet they're the ones attributed to being the biggest, you know, and most bloodthirsty. But I'm not going to give them a pass either, because they're the ones that sat by and maybe let it be known that they loved them for, you know, killing all these innocent, you know, Poles and Belarusians and Russians, you know, to the score of, I guess, 27 million people. The United States lost hardly anybody. I think I don't know if it was 250,000 soldiers, and but yet they won the war, and Russia lost 27 million. The Soviet Union, and as you know, in the West, they're trying to downplay Russia's contribution in World War II, and they're trying to act as if they're the ones that did it. They did it all alone. And then now they're trying to also swing it in such a way that Russia was on the side of Adolf or whatever. They do that already in Poland, and I think also in Ukraine. Anything to go against Russia. You guys already know all that stuff. So anyway, that's about all I have to say for right now. And I don't know how long. Oh, good, it's under an hour, so maybe this will upload a lot faster. It looks like it's going to be a good day. I'll be able to take this coat off very soon. It's getting warm. So maybe it's the end of our cold weather here. We'll find out. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.